we're back with our ninth episode of the Utility Strategy Podcast, the first infrastructure podcast to shine a light on what we love to call utility strategy. As we all know, buried utilities pose an enormous risk to any infrastructure project and, well, create extreme uncertainty amongst the different stakeholders. Thing is that with the right utility strategy, we're able to mitigate that risk and streamline our project, which is what our podcast is all about. So sharing and gaining all kinds of insights that will enable just that, helping project managers, utility coordinators, estimators, mappers, planners, designers, engineers, and basically any other stakeholder overcome the challenges of buried utilities in our right of way. And to help us do just that, we have here with us today Neil Brammall, who's an incremental leader in the National Underground Asset Register in the UK, otherwise known as NUAR. Neil has worked in the utility sector for over 20 years, creating and delivering geospatial software solutions focused on reducing the risk of damage to buried assets and on improving the accuracy and quality of the data held about those assets. He is a two-time winner of the Geovation Innovation Challenge and has provided independent expert advice to a number of utility data sharing initiatives in the UK over the past several years. Neil, without further ado, what's NUAR and what's your role in this incredible mission? Take it away.
Thank you, David. Thanks for that introduction. Really pleased to be here to talk about the National Underground Asset Register, as you said, which I will call NUAR from now on. Otherwise, this podcast could go on for quite a while. NUAR this is an initiative which is being which is sponsored and run by the Geospatial Commission, which is part of the Cabinet Office at the centre of the UK government, and the initiative is really about providing a secure and controlled data sharing platform that enables the owners of buried assets to share information about those buried assets and those networks in order to promote safe and efficient working and safe and efficient excavation in proximity to those buried assets. So it's really about that safety. That safety message is really central to the whole project, and it's really about providing a view which is combined, which is comprehensive, which is interactive and standardized, and giving that rich view of buried assets in order to support safety.
So Neil, what actually took such a 360? Like, how did we get to this? That the government stepped in and said we need a national utility asset registry. Well, can you give us a little bit of background of how we actually got here? Because it's very across North America. It's going to be very difficult to see that happening. Like, what actually brought it about? And did the UK not have PAS 128 or one? I'm trying to call which. Was that the next step?
PAS 128 is.
Yeah, I can go through some of those other standards and initiatives as part of my answer to that, I guess. And it's a really good question. And I think the most important thing I think to highlight is that NUAR isn't really a top-down initiative. It isn't something that is just being kind of handed down from government to to the industry. The really important thing to stress here is that the seeds of NUAR are really in bottom-up grassroots initiatives that were initiated by buried asset owners in the UK, and in particular there are fairly recent initiatives. One in London called the Hades Project, and one in the northeast of England called New Hub, which came out of the Northumbrian Water Innovation Festival, which is an annual event held in the northeast of England. So these are distinct initiatives, as I say, initiated by the buried asset owners, really expressed a desire to share data more efficiently, more effectively, especially to support safe
Sorry,
working.
Neil, just one question here. It's really, really interesting. Those are two polar opposites. A urban center like London, which is a really spaghetti bowl of utilities, and Northumbrian, you said, a very rural municipality.
Which was quite a mix. It's a really good point to make. The northeast region is a real mix. There are really congested urban centres like Newcastle and Sunderland, but also more rural, and also industrial sites as well. So it's it's an astute observation that those kind of differences are really really important. But it did highlight a desire to do things a bit differently. I should just say the importance of data and of plans, as laid plans as part of the safe working process is well recognised in the UK, and is part of it's part of safe working guidance and good practice. And there is a lot of really good work going on already. The asset owners really take their responsibilities seriously there, and there are services and initiatives that help asset owners to distribute PDF plans and things like that. But there was these initiatives really showed a desire to do things a bit differently, a bit more efficiently, and that coincided really nicely with the creation of the Geospatial Commission, which is as I say, a government body. It's an expert body looking to maximise the value of geospatial data within the UK. So in that, so in the setting up of this body, there was a consultation effectively. Where can we make a difference? What can the Geospatial Commission do? And this is across the piece, but there was a really loud and clear message that this was an area that government could really help with, but based on that sort of grassroots bottom-up initiatives and that real drive to do things differently from the industry.
Let's take it one step back. Sorry, I have to understand. In England or in the UK, the United Kingdom, do you actually have one common land base that you were able to start putting it on? Because a lot of areas you don't have that. For example, in Canada, I know we have the 10 provinces, and each one has its own land base, its coordinate system, and depending on where you are, it really differs. In the States, it's even more segmented. Yeah. Well, how did you actually start this project? By having that one common land base, or one common?
Yeah, and that is a really significant factor for us. So we are very fortunate in that. In Great Britain, which is England, Wales, and Scotland, we have Ordnance Survey Great Britain, who are responsible for maintaining the basemap, and there's a product called Master Map, which represents the backdrop mapping for the for the whole of Great Britain. We do have a slight difference within the UK, which is Northern Ireland, and that has a slightly different, that has an equivalent to Ordnance Survey Great Britain for the province of Northern Ireland, and a slightly different backdrop map and slightly different coordinate system. But yeah, it is a really important basis for us to proceed with a project like NUAR. It's probably worth saying that now I'm giving you a bit of a a bit of a breakdown on the difference between the UK and Great Britain and all that. It's really worth saying that NUAR is focused on England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, and not Scotland, because Scotland does have a system called VAULT, which is concerned with buried assets and part of their roadworks register. So we're not, they've got a system in Scotland and a good community in Scotland. So NUAR doesn't extend there, but we are working very closely with our colleagues and friends in Scotland to make sure that we're on the same path really and working closely together.
So what actually brought about NUAR? Like, was it utility damage? Was it a lack of coordination? Was it a need to get things right and make sure that it's all proper and trim? Like, really, what brought it about?
Maybe to add to
Yeah,
that, why is it happening? What are the numbers? Like, well, what's happening in the background?
yeah. So the main case is around safety, and damage prevention, but the other use cases that are fundamental to NUAR are around efficiency. So that is both on-site efficiency and efficiencies around site orientation and things like that, and also the back office efficiencies related to the provision and sharing of data. And it's a really important point to make, actually, that we are very focused on specific use cases. So if you think about all the possible uses of a map of buried assets, you can easily, we could list them now and come up with 100 probably, of all the things we could do with a map like that. And now, but history tells us if we try and solve everything, we're at risk of solving nothing. Scope creep is a real issue. So we have been really heavily focused on those use cases. And as I say, primarily safe excavation is the main one. But so just that I'm not an economist, so I won't go into too much detail on that. But the economic analysis is actually published. It's something we've put out there in the public domain, and I'll be happy to share a link to
Excellent.
that. And we're looking at once NUAR is up and running, we're looking at something like 350 million pounds per year in benefits and savings. And as I said, that is across those use cases around damage prevention and efficiencies. And I should just say, just wanted to call out is a really important work that is undertaken at University of Birmingham, and Professor Nicole Meccia, who some of your listeners, whose work some of your listeners may be familiar with, and really important work on the real cost of utility damages, and taking into account those kind of broader societal costs of utility damages, beyond just the direct costs.
Yeah.
And that research suggests that the kind of proportion of broader societal cost to the cost of direct repair is something like 29 to 1. And that's a
Wow.
really important, really important work that that Professor Metier and her team at University of Birmingham do. And I would really encourage yourself and
That's
your listeners
incredible.
to
29 to 1.
familiarise yourself with.
Now,
Yeah, that's right. And of course, if we look at that kind of societal impact of utility damages, it's a really important element when we consider the potential for government intervention, because of course no one asset owner, no one utility bears the full impact of that broader cost. No one actor in the industry bears that weight. It is literally a societal cost that we all bear as citizens.
now,
And it's a really
I'm
important
going to
aspect
interject
when we
here. This is the case only just for example, in England or in the UK, in England specifically, there is no call, there is not an 811, there is not a call before you dig uh, regulation or sanction.
Yeah.
In the US and in Canada, there's a 811 center, a call before you dig center, where you call and the actual utilities dispatch or locators, and then they go out and market for excavation. In England, there is none, and in the absence of that, I believe that this was the preface of actually getting it going forward. That you were having utility damages because of lack of knowledge of where the utilities were. Do you think that the NUAR will actually fill in that hole of the not having the call before you dig centers? And as well, do you think it's a better model than the call before you dig, than the utilities actually investing money? So it's really a two-sided question.
Yeah, sure. Okay. I mean, the first thing to say is that NUAR isn't some sort of magic wand or silver bullet or whatever whatever language you want to use around damage prevention. I mean, you're quite right to say that 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 there isn't the equivalent of the 811 service. So the use of the distribution of as laid drawings and plans as part of the safety process is quite embedded in working practices here, and I'll go on to that in a bit more detail shortly and how that fits in. And there are some services which are commercial services uh, which help in kind of smoothing that process of getting plans out there. And then it's about PDFs from the individual utilities. So there are commercial services there that help to smooth that. But the but yeah, that is a key difference, that there isn't an 811 service which results in the utilities going out and marking up the locations of their assets. There are some parts of the sector where that is common. So the major accident hazard pipelines, where specific permissions are required for working in proximity. There are processes and a culture, I guess, around site visits and marking up and supervision. But 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 for general works in the highway, that is not the case. But the but but the plans are just one strand of that broader safe working picture, which is kind of encapsulated in guidance from the Health and Safety Executive in the UK. So there's guidance called HSG 47, which lays out good practice around safe excavation. So getting hold of plans is one of those strands, but it also really stresses the importance of ground investigation, of survey, and really treating those plans as guidance, and but doing that due diligence, sorry, and the surveys on site as an important part of that. So NUAR isn't going to, as I say, isn't the silver bullet that replaces all of that. It's that it's that segment of providing the plans and making that more comprehensive and more efficient, um, uh, and easier to execute, but it doesn't replace the need for that ground investigation and for that site
Are you
survey, and that
gonna
still remains really important.
are you gonna be verifying the plans at some capacity? Because like one of the feedback we see from the market is that as built should be called as made, and we're kind of so the industry, and I guess it's probably very similar in the UK, that they're kind of treated as, I think you just said, as guidelines, so to speak, and not
Yeah,
as real hardcore evidence. So how does NUAR
correct.
kind of tackle this issue?
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I'm sorry if I'm talking a lot here because
No, that's what we
there's a
brought you
lot to
here for.
That's
What
the
do you
point of the
mean? That's what we're here
conversation.
for. We want to
well,
learn. The US
I seem
wants
to
to
be
learn
giving
about what's happening in the UK.
I seem to be giving a long answers here, and this might be another one. So so strap yourselves in. So data so data quality and data accuracy is a subject really close to my heart. And NUAR, again, I'm going to sort of lower expectations a little bit and say, this isn't the silver bullet that solves the data quality problem, but we think that NUAR could play a really important role in kind of bearing down on that problem, which is a problem in the UK. I think it's worldwide.
It's worldwide, definitely.
We talk to people across the world. Data quality, data accuracy is a real issue. So NUAR does not change fundamentally that rule, if you like, that the plans are for guidance only and need to be supported by site survey, by inherently safe excavation practices. But in terms of data quality, um, we we believe that we have a bit of a mantra in the NUAR project around data quality, and that is we intend that NUAR will promote, support, and enable data quality improvement. And if I may, I'll just dig, that is just a slogan, okay? So I'll dig
Let's
into
do
I'll
that.
dig
Let's do
into
that.
a little bit of what that really means. So so in terms of promoting data quality, a really important aspect of the NUAR project is the standardized data model, which is based on an emerging international standard called MUDI, which has been developed by the Open Geospatial Consortium. So that that standardized data model is really crucial all all to all elements of NOAA really. But in terms of data quality and promoting data quality, we've we've made sure that there is a really strong support for metadata about data quality within our data model. Now, at this moment in time, we may expect that that is maybe fairly sparsely populated. There's a whole range of kind of data maturities, I guess,
So
within
I'm
within the
going to
industry.
interject here for 1 second. With Muddy, it actually integrates ASC 38 and ASC 75. 38, the current existing infrastructure, and 75, the as-built or the interchanging of new
Yeah.
infrastructure, as well as CSAS 250, which it acknowledges as well because it's acknowledged within 75.
Yes.
Now the question is, if you are taking those things as your seed, would it not be best to build a system which actually acknowledges all the different data levels and all the pedigrees within it, instead of just that open space of, here we go, here's what it tells, here's the guide? Would it not be best served to actually put that information in there and start building a pedigree system?
Yeah, that is that is one viewpoint. Certainly, we've taken, and that who knows what lies in the future in those future use cases, but we've taken the decision for NUAR, I guess, taking one step at a time,
Yeah,
I
you've got
guess,
to start
to
somewhere. That completely makes
yeah,
sense.
and really express that kind of as laid picture, and what we might consider on some level is, are the authoritative data about the authoritative data about the buried assets, which is held by by the owners of those assets. Now, I completely take your point about building up that picture and building up that pedigree. And we do in the data model, we do support. So in the UK, just a bit of a callback to what you said earlier, PAS 128 describes the utility good practice in terms of utility surveys and includes quality levels in terms of confidence about the locations of surveyed assets. So we are including information about that within the data model. That's if that is supported by the asset owners. And now the challenges of building up that kind of, as you put it, that kind of pedigree picture is it does get very potentially gets very complicated around questions of authority, of ownership, of currency, and in that's not to say it's. I'm not shooting down your idea here, right? There's a lot of benefit to that, but it does bring a lot of complication in terms of there's a risk of rather than our aspiration of presenting one version of the truth, we're presenting many versions of the truth, and worst case, pouring it onto the user and the data consumer to kind of pick the bones out of that and work out what is authoritative, what is the right answer. So I'm not discrediting the idea at all, because there is a lot of interest in
No,
that.
there's
But we're
challenges.
starting with there are a lot of challenges there, which maybe who knows, we might be able to address those further down the line.
Let's talk about that for a second, about that point of challenges. NUAR is a super progressive initiative, like compared to what's happening in the world in this niche industry of ours. And putting something like this together, like where do you start? Like how do you start collecting the data? Like who's giving you the data? Because when we talk with utility owners in North America, like there's an element of competition that the telecom companies don't want to share their information, and the oil and gas companies don't want to share where their assets are buried because they don't want each other to know of where each other's buried. And then there's the challenge of how do you moderate who gets access to this information, who do you give access to, and we can go on and on, of course. So how does NUAR tackle these issues and these challenges?
Yeah, and those are, I think what you've described are, are universal challenges, or they certainly are challenges that we face in the UK. And that key difference between what we might consider, regional monopolies versus truly competitive service providers, I think that and the different drivers for those businesses, I think that is a key difference, and probably a universal difference.
Sorry, participation in NUAR, is it voluntary or is it mandatory?
It is.
Okay.
It is voluntary, and that's a very deliberate decision that we are building NUAR and building and driving participation in NUAR by really demonstrating the benefits of participation, and that's a really important thing. And there's a subtle extension to that, which we've learned from other geographies, from Scotland, from other parts of Europe, and from the initiatives that we observed in the UK that NUAR was kind of built on. And that is the importance of a motivated community to do things better, and to have this mutual self-interest, really. And that is a really important part. So NUAR, I'm the product owner for NUAR, so I get my hands into the technical nitty-gritty, but I reluctantly concede that NUAR is not a technical problem to solve. It's important to get that right, but the technological aspects are not the main problem that we are looking to solve here. that engagement and that community and expressing the benefits of participation are absolutely fundamental. And I'm not, as I say, we are very much standing on the shoulders of giants here. I'm not going to say, and proclaim that NUAR is a is educating the world about this, because we have very much learned that from other initiatives in other countries, and the importance of that is of that community and expressing the benefits of using it, and that is made easier by having front and center of our focus that safe working, because that is a common problem for everyone. Everyone who sends out their people to dig holes in the ground, they are sending them out to to an environment which, in the worst case, can cause them serious injury and ultimately death. And we should never lose sight of that. And the benefits of having this combined and consistent picture of what is underground. It isn't the silver bullet, but if that can contribute to keeping people safe, then that is a huge benefit for all concerned, and that's the real clincher for us. And the participation that we've seen in previous phases of NUAR, pilot phases, has been absolutely exemplary. It's been
Very nice.
We've
Very
seen
nice.
fantastic engagement, fantastic participation, including from those organisations who are in competition, but really recognise the importance of worker safety for them.
Do you have a certain percentage of the country which has been completed already, or do you have some sort of semblance?
We're quite early stages, so our focus at the moment is in 3 regions of the UK, which is London and the northeast of England, which are where those original initiatives were and our pilot projects were, and but we're also focusing in Wales as well, which again has a really strong community, a project called Data Map Wales, and a kind of ready-made community who are really engaged and really keen to do things differently. So those are our 3 regions for now, but we'll be growing out the rest of England, Wales, and Northern Ireland over the next couple of years.
Do you have a scalable target date? Do you say we want to do 10,000 kilometers this year, 20,000 next, or is it just going to be as it plays out?
Yeah, it's more of a regional approach, as I say. That's our kind of unit of growth, I guess. And but the overall coverage for England, Wales, and Northern Ireland, we are due to complete. Well, it's a 3-year project, and it kicked off in September 2020. So that's our target.
Do you have a requirement to go back for funding? Is it going to be perpetually government funded, or is this something which you're going to be turning over to the private sector?
Yeah, so we've got so the 3-year project to get that national platform in place. That is funded. So that is a government project, but one of the key work streams within the project that we're working very hard on now is that future models work stream, which will define what that post-project sort of run phase, if you like, what that looks like. So that's an inherent part of the work that we're doing in the project at the moment.
Now it's a very high intensity project. If I look at England, it looks small on a map, but it's still very large. And I just imagine the amount of rural communities and the rural subset, which has 1 or 2 utilities running through it, but it still has utilities running through it. How are you going to capture that as well?
Yeah, and it's a really important point, and that mix of and quite often those rural, more isolated assets are extremely significant in terms of major accident hazard pipelines and things like that. So from a safety profile, they are really critical. So we are engaging with the kind of pipeline, the pipeline community, which is a which is a quite a specialised sector, very heavily focused, quite rightly, on safety, and it's a sector that I've been involved with over the years as well, and that is, again, it's almost, you know slightly different approach to take to different sectors, and understanding the things that are really important to different sectors, and that representation of concepts like hazard and sensitivity and criticality, and how you visualize things like that, and how you control access to that, and possibly redact data, or it's or obfuscate data. Those are really important parts of that. I said it's a secure and control platform. That was
Yeah.
the first thing that I said, and that handling of sensitivity, is really important part of the controls, um, uh, that we're looking to implement, and that's a really important aspect for instance, major accident hazard pipelines
So
and other,
when you look at
the high hazard
when you
sectors.
look at the U.S. or Canada with their 811 that they're called before you dig system, do you feel that can actually, the creation of NUAR can actually help you get a national call before you dig system in England, or is it the exact opposite, that it will alleviate the issue?
Yeah, I don't see us. There's no sign that the UK will move to that model of uh, of utilities visiting site and routinely marking up. I don't that who knows what's in the future, but that model doesn't look to be on the cards, and I don't think NUAR makes that 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 inherent model more likely. But in terms of kind of that one stop shop, you know that this is where you go first, to at least get information about what's underground. Then we do see NUAR having that kind of national that national impact for England, Wales, and Northern
When you say where to go first, to me it sounds like the engineers and the designers at the very early stages, that's where they need to go, to NUAR. And like, are you seeing that? Like that the engineers and designers are working with you, or is this like a very much boots on the ground just before we start construction? We're gonna just make sure.
No, it's no, I know it very much is aimed at the kind of the kind of planners. So in terms of the the target audience for NUAR just now, we're not looking at the moment for that very stages to be kind of target audience. That's the list in the kind of future use cases. Uh, but we are definitely looking at the planning, the planning stage of excavations. So it's very much for the safe planning and execution of excavations. That is the target of this phase of the project.
Will that be included in PS 128, where they'll actually say refer to NUAR as a source of records?
That yeah. So PAS 128 does include the provision of records. So that's the kind of the survey type D is called in called PAS 128 as laid records. So so we're very much looking how we can build that utility survey and search community into the user group of NUAR. So we are aiming primarily at the asset owners and their supply chains, which obviously will include utility surveyors, but working very closely with the utility survey community to see how they can be key users of NUAR as part of that broader safe excavation landscape.
Now,
So that's very much on our
is
roadmap.
there
Yeah.
also a an open 360 user forum, when if someone finds something that's incorrect in yours, where they could send it back and say, wait a minute, that's not here, that's actually there?
Thank you. I'm glad you raised that, because that was we kind of when I was talking about data quality, we went off onto a few other things, but that's a really important that is a really important aspect. So we have some there's a kind of sibling standard to PAS 128 in the UK called PAS 256, and that includes guidance on providing feedback on ASLAID records of things that are found. Mainly, so two types in there: wrongly recorded objects, which is feeding back, mapping inaccuracies, and then unidentified buried objects, which sounds much more exotic and exciting than it is, but that's just the things that you find that aren't on any plans. So we are building in support for those within NUAR, plus just general observations, as well as those two specific types. So that kind of feedback loop is a really important aspect of the platform, and again, that's part of that sort of data quality improvement picture. Again, not a silver bullet, right? But the ability to feed back on things that you've found in the ground that don't match what's on the map. That's a really important aspect of the platform.
Now,
and just one more thing on that data quality piece, because this is my passion, really. I just wanted to draw out something which is maybe a bit more subtle about the standardized data model, which is, in the act of transforming data to the standardized data model, that is another opportunity to provide useful and objective information about data quality. So by reporting back to asset owners on the level of conformance of their source data to the data model, that's another data quality metric that we can use. And it's not a perfect metric. Again, we're not saying this data model is perfect and contains everything, and therefore conformance to it is the be all and end all. But actually, it is, if we report consistently to every asset owner in consistent terms against that data model, then that's usable, objective information about data quality, which will help asset owners to hopefully improve the quality of their data.
I'm going to take a step.
Sorry,
I'm going to take one step back. Does every utility in the UK or in England use the same basemap and the same systems? Because that's
right.
one of the point of contentions here, where you have one utility using X, then you have another utility using Y, and they all say, well, we like our system, we want to keep it in our system, and then when we integrate, it looks great, but it's not quite there.
Okay, yeah. So there are two slightly different things there. So in terms of systems, then no, there isn't a consistent approach in terms of GIS systems, in terms of asset management, real range. In terms of base, I'll give qualified and say that certainly the majority of asset owners.
Neil, I think you're breaking up a bit. Is it just with me?
Sorry.
Okay.
Sorry, am I back?
Yeah, you're back.
Yeah, we lost the last.
Sorry, I'll just rewind a little bit. Okay, sorry. So had I finished the point about a patchwork of different systems, GIS systems, and asset management?
That time, yeah.
Okay. So in terms of systems, there is a patchwork. There is a lot of variety in terms of GIS systems, in terms of asset management systems. So there isn't a standard there. There are pockets of commonality within different sectors, but there isn't a standard. In terms of the base map, it's a qualified yes. In terms of most of the asset owners will use the standard Ordnance Survey background mapping, but there is a really important issue there, which is many of them will be on different versions and different epochs of that backdrop mapping. So and often this is changing, But in the past, obviously, buried assets were digitized relative to a given backdrop map, not in absolute terms. As equipment improves and the prices come down, we're seeing asset owners capturing their assets using absolute positions more commonly. But a lot of legacy data is relative to backdrop mapping. So if you put that against the latest version of the backdrop, there is a risk that those relative positions are out, depending on how old the original backdrop mapping is. So that definitely is a challenge for that combined map. But if you look at the other side of, that might be an argument for not using a standard base map. But if you look at the opposite of that argument, what that means is a lot of asset owners are kind of stranded on an old version of the base map, which no longer represents the real world on site. So the kind of status quo isn't ideal either, in terms of in terms of assets being tied to that an old version of the base map. So we do, so it's a kind of an insoluble problem, I guess. But we're going with the latest version of the base map, and giving people the opportunity to feed back on that. We will in the data model support the ability for asset owners to provide sections of custom mapping where this is a particular issue. So we do anticipate allowing some sort of alternative sections of base map to be used as asset owner specific data at times.
Teal, I'm going to make a statement, and I'd like you to quantify my statement.
I love your
Tell
statement.
In the absence of one call, and in the absence of a call before dig system or a national call before dig system with the NUAR registry, would we not say that the focus on engineering and subsurface utility engineering and asset management mapping way ahead of project planning become that key focus, versus just taking a base map of utilities and then planning around it and then going to excavation with that initial base map? So we're really providing a key point saying that do as much investigation ahead of time, so that when you actually get to your execution of the project, it will just be a matter of verification of what's on the map, versus hoping that the map is correct and that NUAR is correct, and really going forward. So what would you say to that statement, that focus for PS 128, and as well even additional investigations prior to a full utility engineering survey?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely spot on. I wouldn't disagree with that at all. And the key, you've mentioned PAS 128 and the utility surveys. The document that I always come back to is the one I mentioned before, HSG 47, which is the guidance on safe excavation. And that is crystal clear that plans are important and an important part of the safe excavation process, and NUAR is very much focused in that area, but they in no way replace the critical need for site investigation and for thorough survey of what's underground. I mean, who knows? In 50 years' time, that landscape may have changed, and we've got real time reports of the precise locations of assets. But we're not in that world now. And what I always say is NUAR does not change a single dot or a single comma of that guidance, which says that plans are important, but ultimately they are a guide, and you need to get on the ground and you need to investigate what is really underneath your feet.
It's funny because that's exactly what we're working for, that live map, that integration of what's there and what's going to be there, and how the interaction of what's been happening over the last week, 2 weeks, month, 10 months, 5 years between projects and between the life cycle of these utilities, of how the different things interact, even maintenance cycles. You little patch repairs and water main breaks and all the different different, all the different cycles within the life of an actual utility road or a corridor. I'm going to ask one question just out in left field here, and when you say Ordnance Survey, I think of something because I'm from Israel. I think of a survey of explosives.
Okay. Ordnance Survey. Listen, I'm not a spokesman for Ordnance Survey, so I'm going to apologise in advance if I get some of this wrong. But Ordnance Survey is the national mapping agency of Great Britain,
and has nothing to do with the name. Then you're looking for ordnance.
No, but it was it. Oh no! This is going to be really embarrassing if I get this wrong, or if I'm remiss on this. But
we'll let it out.
It's
no, we won't.
It's a couple of, you should do some online research and see the fascinating history of Ordnance Survey. But it is a couple of 100 years old now, and it was and the initial purpose was for the purposes of military placements and military defences, and military intelligence. So so there is a slight link to that, but the role of the organisation has kind of overtaken the name now to some degree. And I apologise massively.
No, that's okay.
In the UK, if I misrepresented Ordnance Survey.
I appreciate it, because one of the things I find in Europe, especially in Netherlands, England, a lot of times when you're doing excavation, you're also going to be coming upon a lot of ordnance, and that's where I thought the connection was ordnance, or that they just surveyed all of England because of.
Not quite, but you're right. That is, that would count as an unidentified buried object, I guess. And the other thing that happens in the UK and surely elsewhere is interference with archaeological sites, of course. And there's been a few cases over the years of buried sections of Hadrian's Wall in the northeast of England and in Scotland being interfered with and damaged. So another value add for NUAR is to include that kind of information about conservation sites and archaeological.
So you're going to add that metadata into there, saying that there's an archaeological area here. Do not come. Do not proceed.
That's right.
Interesting.
Absolutely, yeah.
Neil, I have two last questions as we kind of come towards the end of our session. First one is, the UK is doing something pretty amazing with NUAR. That's like I said, that is super progressive, and there's lots to learn from. So, what do you think is the best or the best takeaways from NUAR that other countries can learn from and implement into their industry guidelines and procedures?
Wow, that's a good question. I will start by repeating my statement from earlier and show, frankly, an appropriate level of kind of humbleness here, because I do appreciate you saying that we are doing something big, something important here. But I will reiterate that we are standing on the shoulders of giants here, and there are countries and organisations that have very much gone before us, and whose coattails we're riding on. And I mentioned Scotland, the Great Rock in Scotland, and across Europe as well. We've talked a lot over the years with our friends and colleagues in different countries. So we have definitely learned a lot from those that have gone before us. But I think for me, I would call out two main things that I would say are really important. I'll do the lesser one first. As a kind of a data person and a bit of a techie, I will say that standardization of data is really important, and that standardized data model built on an international standard and bringing in all that expertise and experience from across the world is really important, and kind of presents benefits in all sorts of different ways. Like I talked about the data quality benefit and things like that, which are perhaps quite subtle, perhaps quite hidden. But I think that's really, really important. But I will say the main thing is listening to the community, your community of users, and building from the bottom up, and that community and that engagement. Without that, you've got nothing. You can build the shiniest platform in the world, but without that participation and without that community to really engage and define and support that, then you have nothing. So I would say start there, and the rest. I won't say the rest is easy, but the rest will fall into place if you get that right. And we've learned that from other countries and other initiatives as well. So I'm not claiming it as a unique NUAR insight, but I'm more amplifying that lesson that we've learned. So yeah.
I think that Phil and I and probably all our listeners can absolutely echo that. We're seeing this in conversations that we're having, whether it's on the podcast or off the podcast. Uh, Everyone is talking about the community and how we all, as an industry, need to get together and tackle this issue. And like you said, there's no silver bullets, and each one of us, each organization, is coming up with their own solution to this issue. And at the end of the day, all we want to do is solve it. All we want to do
Yeah.
is prevent the loss of life, prevent damages, prevent people cutting off from their necessities, and helping basically the utility industry, the civil engineering industry, do a better job. Um, and I think it's great to see initiatives like Noir come up, and we just hope to see more of them. Now, last question, last but not least, and we ask all our guests this question: who do you think should be our next guest on the podcast after Neil? Who would you recommend?
I mentioned this name before, and she may not thank me for this because I know she's a very busy person. But I think an hour in the company of Professor Nicole Metcher from University of Birmingham is always an hour well spent. So I will.
Holding you accountable for
So
the
that would be my recommendation.
Okay, good.
Well,
So
you do know that we need that personal introduction, though. So we are looking forward to that being CC'd on that email, and that will get the ball rolling.
yeah,
I'll be very happy. She's a very knowledgeable, very interesting person. As I say, she may not thank me for this, but I will be happy to
we'll
try.
make sure to make it up. So,
No,
Neil,
it's been a fantastic hour. I really enjoyed this.
yeah,
I speak for myself, and having these conversations and having these thorough discussions on all these different strategies, because really we're taking a shot at it from a 360 approach, and really looking at all the different points from different corners of the world. It's been an absolute fantastic journey for myself, for David, and I see the great tidbits that come out of it, and I really want to thank you for your input and your knowledge and your grace of operation of what you are doing there and how you are making the community better. So, Neil, really thank you. I know you're a civil servant right now. It sometimes feels like a thankless job, but you are really doing a great thing, and I do appreciate it. So,
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate that, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you. I've really enjoyed it as well. I've probably talked way too much, but I really enjoyed it. So thank you for listening.
we enjoyed it too, and we're sure that our listeners are appreciating this. Again, Neil, thank you so much for being on the show, and hope to have you again for another episode in the future.
Hang on, did we hear the British accent? Was it British, David? What was it today?
I think it was a mixture of Israeli American and maybe slightly British. So
Maybe a touch of Aussie? Just say Vegemite.
We'll,
Say
we'll let
Vegemite.
out we'll let out we'll let out Aussie listeners be the judge of that. So,
All right,
Leo,
perfect.
thank you so much.